All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're taking a look at a book with a title you just can't ignore, Become a Living God by E.A. Coding. This is a text that claims to lay out a real working system of practical magic. So we're going to explore its core ideas, how it's all structured, and yeah, its very, very bold promise.
See, the book wastes absolutely no time. This quote is right there in the introduction, and it's the whole game. This is the central, audacious premise of everything that follows. And just to be crystal clear, this is not presented as some kind of metaphor. According to the author, this is the literal, achievable goal of the entire system. So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll unpack that radical premise. Then, we'll get into the three godlike powers that are the foundation of it all. From there, we'll see the two philosophical paths you can choose, look at an actual example of magic in practice, and finally, get to the ultimate transformation the book says is possible.
Okay, so let's dig into that first part. What does this radical premise actually mean? Well, the big idea here is that humans aren't just meant to, worship the divine, but to actually unlock it inside themselves. The book frames this not as some fantasy, but as a real potential that can be systematically developed.
But before we go any farther, it's really important to see how the book itself frames its own content. Right at the beginning, it includes this disclaimer. It advises that the information should be seen as entertainment, that mainstream science obviously doesn't accept magic as real, and that this isn't professional or medical advice. You use it at your own risk. This really sets the stage for the specific non-mainstream belief system we're exploring.
Now, this is a really key distinction the author makes. The system isn't about wishful thinking or just, hoping for the best. It's positioned as a direct, actionable framework where so-called miracles aren't random. They can be reliably directed and channeled to get specific results.
So the big question is, how does someone supposedly achieve this godlike status? Well, the book breaks it all down into a core framework. It argues that the entire system of power really rests on developing three fundamental abilities. And that number is 3. 3 specific godlike powers that are, according to the text, just waiting to be unlocked inside of us. And here's the entire structure of that system, laid out perfectly. The 3 powers are omniscience, which is the power to know anything, omnipotence, the power to manifest anything, and omnipresence, the power to be anywhere. But here's the crucial part. Each one is directly linked to a specific magical practice. Divination is how you develop knowing, evocation is how you develop manifesting, and soul travel is how you develop presence. Let's look a little closer at these practices, starting with evocation. This is the tool for omnipotence, for power. The book describes it as the ability to actually summon spiritual beings into our reality to perform tasks and, carry out your will in the world. And then there's divination. This is the pathway to omniscience, to knowing. This covers all sorts of rituals, tarot, scrying, things like that, but they're all aimed at one goal, to get information that is normally hidden from us, especially information about the future.
Okay, so once a practitioner understands these foundational powers, the book presents them with a really fundamental choice. It outlines 2 very distinct philosophical paths that basically determine how and, more importantly, why these powers should be used. And these paths are presented as the left-hand path, also known as black magic, and the right-hand path, or white magic. The difference between them really boils down to motivation. The left-hand path is described as taking for the self. It's about putting your own individual will above everything else, focusing on personal power, and caring only about what works, not about conventional morality. The right-hand path, on the other hand, is about giving from the self, aligning your will with a higher divine source. It's perfectly summed up by that old saying, "Not my will, but thine be done."
So the book then shifts gears. It moves from these really high-level theories and philosophies into very specific, practical, step-by-step instructions. And to give you a really concrete sense of what this looks like, we're going to walk through one of the simple rituals it describes. And the example we're looking at is a black magic spell. So this fits right into that left-hand path philosophy we just talked about. It's presented as a direct tool for asserting your will on the world to get what you want. So here's how the ritual is laid out. It starts pretty simply. You quiet your mind, release tension, and light a black candle. The real work, though, happens in your mind, in the visualization. You're meant to see your desired outcome as if it's already real, already happened, and then you pour all the energy and emotion of that desire into the candle flame. The ritual ends with you speaking your command out loud and then blowing out the candle, which is supposed to release that power out into the world to do its work.
All right, so after laying out the theories, the powers, the different paths, and the practical rituals, the book brings it all together. It describes the ultimate state of being that the practitioners promised they can achieve if they follow this system.
And it all leads right here. The ultimate goal is described as gaining complete, total control over the circumstances of your life. The final promise of the book is that by mastering these abilities, you can become the master of your own destiny, and you can do it all through what it calls non-physical action.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. You know, whether you view this system as a practical guide to the supernatural or as a really elaborate metaphor for self-empowerment, it definitely leaves us with a pretty provocative question to chew on. What really is the relationship between our beliefs, our personal power, and the reality that we all experience every day? That's something to think about.